Haggada של Pesach, we have 3 days. So, should we begin the Haggada של Pesach, huh?
Should everybody have one?
No, actually, we're talking about the concept of the Haggada today.
I'm not sure.
Are we going in the specific order?
What? So I'm starting the concept of the Haggada, בכלל, מה עושים פה? So, starting off with Haggada של Pesach. So, Haggada של Pesach, this Chag is called, נכון? Chag HaPesach. What happened in Chag HaPesach? Hashem Pasach על ביתי בני ישראל במצרים. So the fact that Hashem Pasach על ביתי בני ישראל במצרים, Hashem skipped the houses of בני ישראל במצרים, that's why it's called Chag HaPesach. The shaila is that Hashem skipped the houses in Mitzrayim. That was the minor part of the whole miracle of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Yetziat Mitzrayim, what was the most important thing? We got out of Egypt. נכון? So why we call this Chag, Chag HaPesach, that Hashem skipped the houses of the Jew, where the whole idea of the Chag is us leaving, going out of Mitzrayim.
I just thought of the Shabbos. We say in Ezra, we say, "Chabad Karem Ha'ata, V'Chari Yisrael Dalta." So I was thinking, why doesn't it say there he redeemed all of Klal Yisrael? So it must be that there was something about the Jewish Bechoros that were supposed to die also.
Right, yeah, so the Jewish Bechoros were supposed to die as well.
Question is why?
Right, correct. But I think we can address it. Second question really bothers me. באמת, we are celebrating Yetziat Mitzrayim, נכון? When Yetziat Mitzrayim happened,
What was the first question? I'm sorry.
first question is why we call it Chag HaPesach when it's a minor thing. When יציאת מצרים happened, בעצם הזה, היום הזה, יצאו כל צבאות בני ישראל מעצם מצרים. The real celebration of Pesach should be on the day. Why are we celebrating it at night? When the actual event, I mean, Shavuot, I can say we learned it all night because we were sleeping that night. But when the actual whole event happened during the day, why would we be celebrating the night? A much more appropriate time to celebrate the day.
It started in the night.
You're right, it is about, but the event that we are celebrating is the freedom out of Mitzrayim. When we got out of Mitzrayim, during the day.
Yeah, we got the okay at night. We said we got the okay at night.
Yeah, but
But the Gemara says itself that the real one is right there. Everybody's
The whole
messing
idea-
around.
The
It's
Korban
after.
was in day.
What?
no, the
Korban was
Korban
by night.
The Korban was at night,
Korban
but
was
the
at
actual
night?
Yetziat Mitzrayim was during the day. So I think a day is much better time to celebrate. All of the mitzvot is celebrating
Well, it's
during
also,
the day.
it's also Korban Pesach. That's like the ikar part of the
But it's not.
the night
Korban
thing.
Pesach should be the minor part of it because
But
the
that's what we
event-
celebrate. I know, but
Right,
the
we're
cel-
celebrating
right.
Korban Pesach, but the actual event happened during the day. Will be much better to celebrate it during the day. Some basic question: why it's called Haggada של Pesach? What's Haggada? שאומרים, נכון, להגיד, שכוח. נכון, מה זה הגדה של פסח? And why it's called ליל הסדר? איזה סדר, you know? Okay, we have 15 steps. But that's why it's called ליל הסדר. לא, ליל הסדר, סדר, מה קרה פה?
That's the most retarded Seder you've ever seen in your life.
That's right, it's a big mess, you know?
Maggid
It's not
should
being
be
organized
first.
בכלל. We are not organized. Why it's
Shulchan Aruch
called
should be
בכלל? Why it's called בכלל ליל הסדר? Now there is one of the famous משניות, we read in the Haggada של פסח, מזכירים יציאת מצרים בלילות. We mention יציאת מצרים at night. אמר רבי אלעזר בן עזריה, הרי אני כבן 70 שנה, ולא זכיתי שתאמר יציאת מצרים בלילות עד שדרשה בן זומא. So, Rabbi Elazar, his brother, is like 70 years old, and he didn't have the zchut. Why is like 70 years old? The famous story that he was really 18, and it was a miracle that he looked like, we'll talk about it in a minute, was a miracle that he looked like 70 years old. Okay, Shkoyach Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, we know you had a miracle, Chazak u'Baruch. What that has to do with the question whether why Yetziat Mitzrayim not is mentioned at night? He said, I am like 70 years old and I don't know that Yetziat Mitzrayim being mentioned at night. What's that helping us b'chalaf for the message of the Mishnah? Wow,
connection?
you like 70 years old, oh, Chazak u'Baruch. What difference does it make? So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah should say, אמר רבי אלעזר בן עזריה, לא זכיתי שתאמר יציאת מצרים בלילות. Who cares what? Let's use 70, okay? Okay, so you לא זכית. What's the message that he's giving us? That I'm like 70 years old and I didn't have the zchut for יציאת מצרים to be said at night.
Why also לא זכיתי? Why לא ידעתי?
לא זכיתי, yeah, that's what שתאמר, לא זכיתי. What's the לא זכיתי פה? What is he looking forward? יסים רבי אליעזר say, okay, I'm dying שתאמר יציאת מצרים בלילות ולא זכיתי. Who cares? You're like 70 years old. You're not...
The whole reason that he was like
Yeah, מה זה פשוט לא זכה? מה זה לא זכיתי? אני לא יודע. לא זכיתי to know.
I'm 38 years old, I don't understand Haggada.
לא זכיתי, I didn't have the זכות to know that יציאת מצרים will be... Why we are saying יציאת מצרים at night?
הוא הולך על הרשע. מזכירים יציאת מצרים.
נכון, אז הוא אומר ולא זכיתי. אז מה זה הלא זכיתי בו? איזה זכות אתה מחפש? Which type of זכות you are looking for יציאת מצרים at night? Now the real question is, why we mention יציאת מצרים at night? Because the Parsha of Tzitzit should not be said at night. למה? The Gemara says, in Menachot, it says, "Uritem oto, וזכרתם את כל מצוות Hashem." So when do you see the tzitzit? During the day. At night is not the time of re'iyah. It's not the time to see. So therefore, only during the day we say in the mitzvah of tzitzit, we should say the parasha of tzitzit. At night we shouldn't say the parasha of tzitzit. That's a simple pshat. Why we actually saying the parasha of tzitzit? Because he said at the end of parasha of tzitzit, "Ani Hashem Elokechem asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim." Since we mentioned over there the word Yetziat Mitzrayim, and we know Ben Zoma Omer, Kol Yemei Chayecha, we should mention Yetziat Mitzrayim also at night. So therefore we're mentioning the parasha of tzitzit at night. This doesn't make sense. The parasha of tzitzit is the parasha of a day. We have a pasuk of Yetziat Mitzrayim, which the Gemara said what it's coming to teach. We'll talk about that in a minute. Something similar between Yetziat Mitzrayim, something very minor. I'll say the Gemara in Bar Metzia says, מה זה השם? אני השם אלוקיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים. Hashem says, I am Hashem, who, when I got you out of Egypt, I knew between the tipa, a drop of a bechor or non-bechor. I will עתיד להיפרע, אני עתיד להיפרע from someone who's putting different color. Instead of tchelet, he putting kala ilan. It was a similar color to tchelet. And he says this is a tchelet. So the reason we have Yetziat Mitzrayim by Parasha of Tzitzit, just to let you know that someone who's playing a game and he pretend to be tchelet when he's not tchelet, same as Yetziat Mitzrayim, the same thing I'm going to do to him. But the kasha is, okay, but by the end of the day, the whole Parasha is talking about Tzitzit. Yetziat Mitzrayim is mentioning for Tzitzit. So why, because of that, we're going to start mentioning the old Parasha of Tzitzit at night? The old Tanya is that Laila ze lo zman Tzitzit. Why, since we mentioned Yetziat Mitzrayim, suddenly we're converting the whole Parasha to be said at night.
What does that have to do with the guy who said
Ben
the
Zoma?
color, the different kachol?
Yeah, so somebody put a different type of tchelet. It's not real tchelet, and he pretend to be tchelet. Hashem will take revenge from him. Hashem עתיד להיפרע ממנו. בסדר. So what's that? Why? Because of we mentioned that.
Make it problematic what they all do today with the thing?
No, they assume it's tchelet. They think it's tchelet. Yeah, hopefully. So the shaila is,
If it's not, is it like you're...
No, but the Gemara
No,
is saying
they sound like
it's
who
those
pretend,
who fake it.
who fakes it to be tchelet. So that's the reason we mentioned Yetziat Mitzrayim. So vasti pshat
on
bichlal.
tzitzit, so
Therefore,
if you're
for
asking,
tzitzit. So why we should mention it at night?
Right.
Because of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Lo
Don't they
mubhan.
die at tzitzit nowadays?
Huh?
They die. They don't die in tchelet, no?
Today, no. Some people have tchelet.
Blue string.
People some have a mesorah.
My
that this is
uncle has a
tchelet.
tzitzit factory in Israel. It's called Kanesha, and
Yeah.
he showed me how they do everything.
But the tchelet, no, the colored tchelet.
Yeah, but he sends it to a guy and they do it for him. But like, I don't think they.
whatever pshat, but they assume it's tchelet. Those who assume.
Well, why didn't wear
Okay.
tchelet? No one has to wear
So,
tchelet.
in order to understand, I want to ask one more question. Was of a famous story of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, after Rabbi Gamliel gave hard time to Rabbi Yeshua, the Gemara in Chet, Nachon, Brachot. So the Gemara says, Kafchet, Koach. So I saw you Chavav, I'm like you're almost there. So the Gemara says that so they are trying to appoint Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah to be the Nasi of Am Yisrael. So like a good Jew, I think it was Ashkenazi, he said, okay, let me ask my wife. So he went back home and he said him as wife. He went and asked his wife, honey, they gave me a choshev shtele, I'm going to be the Rosh Hashiva, the Nasi of Am Yisrael. And she, like classic wife, gave him hard time. No, listen. You look like 18 years old. You look like a kid. What's going on? You're going to be there. Said, okay, honey, you're right. Sorry. Next day, she regret what she said. Because when he woke up, he was like, I wanted to see your face, in the morning. Huh? He looks like 70 years old. He's like, oh, no, actually, it's fine. Okay.
What was your wife's face when you woke up from Shampara?
At least I didn't look white anymore. So he wakes up in the morning and he's like, what's going on? So the shaila is, Hashem could make a great miracle. But my shaila is Mimai Nafsho. If a guy who has the knowledge of 70 years old needs to have white beard, so that the miracle should happen regardless. And if he doesn't need to have, why? Because his wife complains, Hashem makes miracle. Somebody told me, you have a raya for Shlom Bayis, Hashem makes miracle. I don't know if that creates Shlom Bayis, seeing him white after.
Why did they have to make him white also? Like, what, he can't be a young king?
To look like 70 years old, so because his wife complained, he look like 70 years old. Ma kore po? Unbelievable. With your permission, I'm taking a different direction bichlal now. Last week, Parsha was the story of Nadav and Avihu. Famous Heiliger Nadav and Avihu, they died by Krivam Es Zara Asher Lo Tziva Hashem. So Moshe said to Aaron, הוא אשר דיבר השם לאמור, בקרובה יקדש, ועל פני כל העם יחווה. So the Gemara says that Moshe said to Aaron, I thought that Hashem will be Mekadesh the Mishkan by you or me. Either you gonna die on the Mishkan or I'm gonna die. But Hashem made a special mirror, Hashem did Mekadesh Bet HaMikdash im Nadav and Avihu. The obvious question is, this is a tragedy that happened right now. They brought the wrong korban, Es Zara Asher Lo Tziva Hashem, and they got punished, the kid to be burnt. How can something negative will celebrate something positive, which is the beginning of the Mishkan? Doesn't make sense. But the other kasha is, it
So what
says...
do you mean? The inauguration of the Mishkan was before they died, no?
Nachon, that was Kvod Hashem, and this is Kiddush. There are two pshatim, whatever. That before was a Kvod Hashem Nira Ba'anan, and this is the Kiddush, something else. So with the Kiddush Bet HaMikdash happened with the tragedy, it doesn't make sense.
Isn't it the whole point of a Mishkan?
Tragedies? No.
To lechaper on tragedies.
No, but it cannot, Kedusha cannot come from negative.
No,
Kedusha has to come only with positive. This is a punishment. With a punishment, you cannot get Kedusha. Kedusha come with
Nadav and Avihu bring a korban
to Hashem. Es Zara Asher Lo Tziva Hashem.
and now the Kedusha is...
Hashem, ותצא מביאה ותאכל אותם, Hashem burned them.
Right.
And then, Moshe is telling Aaron, by the way, הוא אשר דיבר השם לאמור, בקרובה יקדש ועל פני כל העם יכבד. That's why Hashem was מקדש בית המקדש with them. This is a punishment. The other part of me says, Es Zara Asher Lo Tziva Hashem. This is the double description. If it's Es Zara, obviously Hashem Lo Tziva. A strange fire, for sure Hashem Lo Tziva. Go weiter. It says, Vayidom Aaron. Aaron was silent. The Gemara says right after, since Aaron was silent, he got a special reward. Ne'emra lo parashat shetuye yain. Someone drunk is not allowed to go into Beit HaMikdash. What was Vayidom Aaron? Aaron was silent for what?
His
The
kid's
son.
death.
It's kid's death, nachon? So what he was doing, Mekabel alav et adin be'ava, okay?
Yeah.
What's the connection between Midah Keneged Midah, the reward that he received, to the action that he did?
What was the reward?
That he got a parasha, that someone drunk not allowed to go into Beit HaMikdash. What's the connection between that to the reward that he gets? The real shaila is, what's the compliment for Aaron HaKohen? You children did chet, Hashem punished them. He knows that Hashem is a met. Big chidush that Aaron HaKohen was silent. You expect Aaron to complain on Hashem? I'm thinking the following. There is a machloket in the Gemara, 5 opinions. What was the sin of Bnei Aaron? Number 1, shelo haya lahem isha, they weren't married. 2, they didn't have children. 3, הורו הלכה בפני רבם, they gave הלכה in front of the rabbi. 4, the word שטויי יין, the word drunk. 5, שהיה להם שיער ארוך, שלא, they didn't cut their hair. So what's with the sin? So which one? So who were Nadav and Avihu? What was the sin of Nadav and Avihu? Nadav and Avihu, they were greater, obviously, than Moshe and Aaron. What's the raya? Moshe already testified. They are greater than you and I. The Gemara said they were walking behind Moshe and Aaron, and they said, "Matai amar echad l'sheni, matai yamutu shte zakenim alalu, ve'ata ve'ani nanhig et hador." When they're going to die, we're going to lead the generation. So what's going on? What's going on over here? Nadav and Moshe ve'Aaron, let's say they were in level 10. Nadav and Avihu were greater than Moshe ve'Aaron, so we can say level 11. The problem of Nadav and Avihu, they thought that they are on a higher level, which they really were. So if they were in a level 11, they thought they are 13, 15. Right. Let's take. They thought they are 15. So they live in one level, meaning they are on high level above, but they perceive themselves as 15. Higher level, 15. The symptoms, the 5 reasons of their chet, is not the reason of chet, they are the symptoms of the problem. Someone who's married, his wife, like, gonna make sure you're gonna know, bijuk miu, you know exactly who it is. Your children, you mirror, showing you who you are. Someone who's drunk, he thinks he's more than he is. More halacha bifnei rabam, give halacha in front of Rabbi, you think you're better than who you are. And having a long hair, it's a sign of, okay, I think better of myself. This is where the now. Now, right, yeah, they bring now a korban. They bring a korban. What's the idea of a korban? Korban is the replacement of a person. Instead of me, the Gemara said, Adam avi korban, keves. When you shech the keves, as if kilu shachat oti. Each step, a man need to experience as if it's happened to them. A korban, it's a replacement of the person himself. Bnei Aaron bringing the korban ktoret in front of Hashem. That's korban. Instead of giving themselves as a korban, this korban become their replacement as a korban. What was the machshava of the level of the korban of Nadav and Avihu? According to the way they were holding themselves, their kavanah on the korban was which level?
15.
Level 15. Who they are? 11. Is this korban relate to them or not?
No.
That's why asher lo tziva Hashem. Be'akrivam esh zara. It's zar is strange to who?
To themselves.
To them. Therefore, Hashem, asher lo tziva Hashem. This is not Hashem command. You're allowed to bring a korban which is you, but this korban, it's not you. What the next pasuk says? ותצא אש מלפני השם ותאכל אותם. Since they had no replacement to themselves, the korban didn't have the kavanah for them. Who became the korban? Them. They were actually pure korban to Hashem. There was no punishment involved over here. The replacement could not happen, so Hashem took them as a korban. When it says Vayidom Aaron, when he said that Aaron was silent?
After Moshe said that he.
After Moshe is talking to him. Don't you think that Vayidom Aaron should be said now? Vayidom Aaron, that the children died. I think that might be a mistake. It says later. After Moshe giving a message to Aaron, then it says Vayidom Aaron. Meaning, Vayidom Aaron being silent is not on the death of his children. It's on the message that Moshe told them. What's Moshe told them? Your children, your job to be Mekadesh Bet HaMikdash was taken away from you by your children. The Gemara says, אין הרב מתקנא בבנו, אין הרב מתקנא בתלמידו, ואין האב מתקנא בבנו. But we see that when Moshe Rabbeinu gave the over to Yeshua to lead Am Israel, and he was sitting in the shiur, the Gemara says, Tov kin'ah achat me'elef. Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't handle it. He said, Hashem, take me. I cannot be here anymore. But this is your student. If your student takes your job, that's mitkaneh. If a student got a better job somewhere else, it's okay. But if a student take the job of his Rebbe, is mitkaneh.
It's a healthy
When, So when the son takes the job of the father, that's mitkaneh. The natural reaction of Aaron HaKohen was to be mitkaneh with the children. They took away his job. Vaidom Aaron knew his level, and it was fine to understand that they are on much higher level than he was. So when we says Vaidom Aaron, the shtika of Aaron is Aaron didn't carry the issue that his children had. He knew who he was. He had no problem with it. The issue of the children was they thought of themselves more than which they really were. Aaron HaKohen he knew who he was. What's the parasha that he received as a reward? Parasha Shtoyeh. If someone is drunk, he's thinking above than he really is. Aaron was able to be who he is. He got the parasha of Shtoyeh. Somebody drunk cannot be entered to Bet HaMikdash. That's exactly midah keneged midah. I have to continue. אני רוצה לשאול אחר כך. מה קורה במצרים? We're living out of Egypt. What's the biggest achievement of Bnei Israel going out of Mitzrayim? We know that the Egyptians were in the highest level of Sha'arei Tumah. Bnei Israel were not in Sha'arei Tumah. They were one step before. They were only Memtet. What's the Sha'arei Tumah? You know that Mitzrayim, the Shtufim bezima. They are full of adultery. Why would what's the motivation of a person to do adultery? What's going on in his heart? Adultery means when someone he doesn't know who he is, he needs other rigushim, other external excitement to his life to make him feel like somebody, like a person. To validate, but it's more than validate. Being lost, arayot, adultery, it's not to validate, it's the opposite. Someone who has zero of his own, he expressed that by being with any woman that he can to give him certain level good feeling about himself, but he cannot validate himself. That's why they go into it again and again and again. The difference between a wife validate the person and a znut, the opposite. It's putting the person down. It doesn't validate the person. The old Egyptian life culture, it's you are nothing. You don't know who you are, and all of your excitement come from loss, from adultery. Bnei Israel were able to hold that. What's the reason Bnei Israel were able to hold and to understand who they are? I want to go 1 second to the story of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was 18 years old. He's sitting in the Beis Medrash, and they decide, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, you are going to be the Nasi, the president of Am Israel. Aval, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, what was his knowledge among the Beis Medrash guys? Like 70 years old. Everybody know who Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was. Now he got a job to be the president of Am Israel. He goes home, and his wife has a good ta'ana. What you look like is not what you are inside. So until today was okay, you were in Beis Medrash and everybody knew who you are. Now that you are in a position as a leader, there is a lie that's going on over here. People will perceive you as one person, but be'emet you are somebody else. You look like 18 years old, people will assume you are 18, but inside you are like 70. Hashem did the greatest miracle, which make him to look white in order to make sure that who he was,
who he perceived?
Who he looked like, exactly. He looked the same as the person that he really was inside. So therefore, by the way, it's a crucial message in life. You know, sometimes you don't want to look like a certain way, but it's a responsibility. Who you are, you got to look outside like the person that it's really you. So therefore, Hashem did this miracle because it's a necessity for the world not to misunderstand who the real face of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. The only way to identify a person, the balance, the challenge that we have in our life is to understand who we are. Who we are, people can go through life and can pretend they feel, they think they are somebody else. They are on completely different level. People can live on a high level of illusion. Mitzrayim gave us the feeling of being the lost. The whole idea of Egyptians are being in, you are nothing, there is no awareness to who you are, you get your excitement outside. There was one thing that was held Bnei Israel to keep them who they are at the end of the day. The Gemara says, מלמד שהיו מצוינים שם. מלמד שלא שינו שמם, לשונם ומלבושם. They didn't change their clothing, the language. Their external identity remained. They were able to be who they are outside. That's the only reason they were able to get out of Egypt. If not, they would have gone into Memtet Sha'arei Tumah. The process of Bnei Israel getting out of Mitzrayim, the whole idea is identification who you are. When Hashem Pasach al Batei Bnei Israel b'Mitzrayim, what was when Hashem jumped over Bnei Israel and Mitzrayim? So the Gemara says, Hashem says, when I went through the Egyptian and to Bnei Israel, the biggest job that Hashem did on the night of Pesach is identification. Who are you? He showed the Egyptian, you think you are Bechor? You are not Bechor. Ben tipa, אני הוא שהבחנתי בין טיפה של בכור לטיפה שלא של בכור. I am the one who gave identity. Hashem says, I'm the one who gave identity to Bnei Israel. You are Jews, you are not Goyim. The Pesach, when Hashem jumped over our houses, it was an experience of cutting, make sure the identity of a person will be who he is. Therefore, the whole idea of tzitzit, why are we having tzitzit outside? What are we supposed to do with it? Uritem oto. You're supposed to look at the tzitzit and identify yourself. Uzchartem et kol mitzvot Hashem. The tzitzit is there to identify you. If someone is taking a tzitzit and he pretend to be tchelet and it's not tchelet, what is he doing?
Making
The
it
opposite
false.
of tzitzit. The whole tzitzit purpose of tzitzit is for you to identify who you are. So what did Hashem says? אני השם אלוקיכם, אשר רוצה את ידכם מארץ המצרים. I am the one that through Mitzrayim made sure to give each one his identity. Someone who falls his identity out, I am the one who will take a revenge from him. The idea of tzitzit is during the day. And this is where Emunah begins. It said, להגיד בבוקר חסדך, ואמונתך בלילות. Emunah, bayom, a day, it's a symbol of understanding. It's clear what you see. When you know something well, when can you really express it? At night. When you go to a room, נכון? And you don't know how it looks like and it's dark, what happened to you? You bumped into the furnitures. If you know how the room looks like, what happened to you? You can go through the room and you can find your way, you have no problem. The idea of tzitzit is to understand who are you during the day. But the ultimate goal of tzitzit is to reach the idea that also at night you know who you are. The reason we're reading Parashat Tzitzit Balayla because of the Yetziat Mitzrayim, because Yetziat Mitzrayim is the ultimate next level after identify ourselves during the day. Yetziat Mitzrayim, the night, it's the expression of who we are. To express yourself, to know who you are, you got to meet yourself at night. You got to see yourself when there are, it's very hard. There is no... Kevagalui. בסתר כבגלוי. כבגלוי. But there, on the moments of night, this is when you express the actual who you are. That's why we end up Parashat Tzitzit with Yetziat Mitzrayim. Because the whole Parashat Tzitzit of identity, when Hashem said in Yetziat Mitzrayim was מבחין בין טיפה לטיפה, the idea of celebration of Pesach, it's דווקא the night of Pesach, it's all about defined identity. Understand who you are. The work of understanding who you are should carry you throughout the nights, not only throughout the days. So therefore, it's called, that's what we call night. The whole focus is on Leil. But it's called Leil HaSeder. What's the pshat? The Gemara says that when Bnei Israel came to Moshe Rabbeinu and they want meraglin, Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Vatikrevun elai kulchem be'irbuvia." They all mixed up together. When the Am Israel asked to send spies to Eretz Israel, what was the reason they want spies? They didn't feel comfortable with who they are, so they want spies. The expression of not being comfortable with who they are, Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Vatikrevun elai kulchem be'irbuvia." You are all coming together. The only way to know who you are, you gotta require the seder. Seder is organize with yourself who you are. We try to organize the night of the seder with the steps of Leil HaSeder, that's stage 1. But the real job of all night of Leil HaSeder is classifying, defining who we are at every step of our life. What we are doing over here? What's my job? What's my purpose? And only through that you can define yourself and carrying it forward to the night. But there is one more element. It's called Haggada shel Pesach. מה זה Haggada shel Pesach? הגמרא says שצריך לומר דברים המושכים את ליבו כהגדה. Haggada means להגדה, it's a connection. It says by Matan Torah, כה תאמר לבית יעקב ותגד לבני ישראל. What's ותגד לבני ישראל? רש"י אומר, דברים הקשים כגידים, hard stuff. On the other end, תגד, we use the form of הגדה, דברים המושכים ליבו כהגדה, something that your heart is connected to. הגדה של פסח, it's a merge between the Magid, the hard, to the Taged Libnei Israel, to the Haggada, to the heart. We have two areas within ourselves that we need to define them and to merge them. We have to approach ourselves with Taged, with Seder, with order, being tough within ourselves, demanding who we are. But on the other end, we're supposed to wrap it up with Haggada. Bring the emotion around it, bring the connection around it. In a way, my father always says that the Hasidim the Litvaks are very dry. The Hasidim are very wet. The Sfardim are exactly in the middle, in between. The idea of Haggada Shel Pesach is to take those two extremes and balance those two. Don't ignore part of the tough. You gotta be tough, but you gotta wrap it up with softness. In order to define who you are, you gotta be fully aware to you both areas. You have your heart and you have your יש את המוח ויש את הלב. מוח זה דברים הקשים כגידים. לב, it's מושכים ליבו כהגדה. It's the worm. The job of Leil HaSeder to unite it, to put together the definition, identity of who we are. Only through identity we can succeed in our life. Like Gemara says in Kiddushin that if a person sees that he wants to do sins, should go somewhere else, ילבש שחורים, and he should do it somewhere else. So I can understand why you should do it somewhere else, and you don't want him to look like a yeshiva guy, They used to say, in Eretz Israel, how can you tell that, you see a guy walks, look like not religious. How can you know he's a yeshiva guy? You see his belt. The belt always is the same, the black belts on a jeans pants, he's a yeshiva guy. The Gemara says when someone goes and he cannot control himself, he should go to elsewhere and dress black. So the point of dressing black is not just he shouldn't look like Shiva guy goes into a club. Oh wow, what's going on? That's not the purpose. There is a special purpose that dress black. de-identify yourself when you're doing something wrong. Don't wear the same clothing that you are used to. Don't attach yourself to what you're doing. Understand that something wrong going on with you, and you dress differently, and you go.
It's
not who you are.
You're sick right now.
Oh, that's a
Like
better
in the
way.
hospital, you're
Identify
wearing the-
that you're sick at the hospital. You were. Understand that you're sick now, which is not who you are.
Or you have a יצר רע. Or you have a יצר רע. או יש לך ויש לך
Right,
יצר
don't
רע.
identify yourself.
Understand that
That's why
it's
you're
not
changing your
you.
clothes.
Make sure that the action that you do, it's not you. The biggest issue that make people fall and is that, עבירה גוררת עבירה. למה? Because when you do one עבירה, you identify yourself with the עבירה that you did, so you define who you are. Automatically, that causing to get to another עבירה. Yeah, when the first עבירה begins, de-identify, make sure this is not me. I am my identity, and unbelievable. Who were able to do that? Bnei Israel. They were in Nuntet Sha'arei Tumah, Memtet Sha'arei Tumah.
They still
49,
identified themselves.
but they identify how them who they are. Obviously, you cannot, don't start with identity before you are, don't put hat and jacket and everything, and then, but they identify, understanding who you are, it's the only way really to create the real emunah. Understanding that Hashem, understanding is the one and only Hashem cares us and loved us, only when you have your own identity. If not, you can take the same messages and you can interpret them exactly the opposite, interpret it wrong. A person who's not aware and identify to himself, he can read the same signals and identify them completely differently. We had on our trip, we had a chef, and I asked the chef some questions about I had to be on top of the kashrut, make sure everything is fine. So I asked the chef one question number one, and then another question, and then he came over to me. He says, "Rabbi, we need to build trust." I'm like, I just want you to know that the only reason I'm asking you because that I trust you. If I wouldn't trust you, I wouldn't ask you. He said, actually you're right. I looked at it from the wrong perspective. But that's the moment that I know that I cannot trust them anymore. Up to that point, I had the chashash, maybe it's okay. But going forward was already, that was the red light. If you need to build trust, that means that, your perspective is not the right perspective. If you feel that you need to tell me that I need to build trust with you, they said, how do you say in Chassidish, how do you say screw up? Screw up? Trust me. Trust me in Yiddish is like screw up. So I then the defining, understanding action that happened to you, the interpretation of happen, everything happened to you can come only. Many actions that we experience are going through our life on a day-to-day. Two people can look at it. One gonna look at it as a sign of something bad, and the other one look at it as something good. Somebody goes to the hospital and says, Baruch Hashem, nothing worse happened. Hamsa, I'm okay. The other one, why Hashem did it to me? They did something wrong. Is everything okay with me? The difference is not the action. The difference is how much you identify yourself. If you're comfortable with who you are, you know what is your place, what is your connection to Hashem, all of the signs of emunah can be interpreted properly and understand that it's all coming from connection. So, יהי רצון להגיד בבוקר חסדךו, ואמונתך בלילות.